Vermont's Lake Willoughby is a glacial lake 300 feet deep. The rock face on the east side of the lake under Mount Pisgah and under Mount Horror on the west side of the lake were cut and eroded by a valley ice lobe which broke up about 14,000 years ago in the Willoughby region. The area between the two mountains and around the South Beach seen here is collectively called the Willoughby Gap. The talus slopes under these vertical cliff faces are atypical and made up of glacial moraine and lake bottom sediment pushed up by the moving ice lobe and supplemented by rocks and boulders falling from the cliffs above. The soil-rich talus slopes help explain the density of tree growth here. The rock slides on the very steep talus slopes can be dangerous, as very large rocks occasionally travel down these slopes to the highway and into the lake. The cliffs are granitic and metamorphic rock from the Willoughby area Pluton. As the pressure on these cliffs was removed when glacial ice melted, large rock falls and slides joined the glacial till and lake bottom sediments that were pushed up by ice against the cliffs, forming the steep talus slopes we see today. Some of the large rock falls included blocks of schist with granite dikes up to 50 feet across and are now visible along the roadway at the base of Mount Pisgah. This finest glacial trough in Vermont was carved through a schist-dominated ridge intruded by granite, which crossed Lake Willoughby from the northeast to southwest and forming the divide between the St. Lawrence and the Connecticut River drainages. This great U-shaped cut is a striking feature of the region and is visible for many miles, even from Mount Washington on a clear day. In it lies Lake Willoughby, one of Vermont's prettiest lakes. This lake is about 5 miles long, less than a mile in width, and 1,170 feet above sea level. Mount Pisgah rises above the eastern shore 2,761 feet, and Mount Horror rises 2,648 feet along the western shore. Between these two mountains in the Willoughby Gap, the lake increases in depth from the eastern shore to about 200 feet and then descends to a submerged gorge 250 to 330 feet in width and a depth of 300 feet. This glacial trough owes its existence wholly to the plucking action of the glacier, as most of the glacial debris is found on a high morainal embankment some distance south of the lake and up to 130 feet above its surface, seen here. These facts and the deep submerged gorge seem to show that the trough was excavated by the southward movement of the glacial ice sheet and its ice lobe. An example of the large rocks that come down off the rock wall is seen here on the east shore under Mount Pisgah. The lake is known for its clarity and chilly temperature. Because of its depth, the surface of the lake freezes later than other lakes in Vermont's northeast kingdom. Across the lake to the west side, we see the steep cliffs under Mount Horror and very steep talus slopes descending to the water, continuing down to the lake bottom to Lake Willoughby's deepest trough at a depth of 300 feet. Northern white cedar is dominant on the vertical rock face. White trunks of paper birch can be seen at the top and less steep sides of the rock face, both cedar and birch growing in inhospitable conditions. Pockets of white pine are growing on top of the cliffs wherever a little soil can accumulate. Nutrients and water are likely very slim for trees on these cliffs, and as a result, they may be shorter and quite old. The processes that carved these cliffs was similar to those which carved New York's Finger Lakes region, where similar glacial processes took place, and where the steepest slopes were often near the southern end of the lakes. What looks like glacial scouring on these cliffs is actually the inclined layers of granite and schist trending upwards toward the south, as most of the glacial scouring took place on rocks that have fallen from the cliffs during the last 14,000 years and are now part of the talus slope below or moved by the ice lobe as it melted to locations further up the lake. The sheer cliffs of Mount Horror and Mount Pisgah provide an environment conducive for Arctic and cliff-growing alpine plants, as well as ideal nesting areas for the rare peregrine falcon. Erratics, boulders transported by glaciers, are found alongside Lake Willoughby, some up to 3 feet in diameter. These erratics have been identified as coming from the Canadian Shield, 100 miles to the north, or from breccia outcrops 30 miles to the north-northwest near Owl's Head Mountain. Lake Willoughby resembles a Norwegian fjord and is part of the St. Francois River watershed, its waters eventually traveling through Canada to the St. Lawrence River.